Hello and welcome to my review of Liquid Smooth 3.0. To note, this is the March 18th, 2014 build, and I am using the Dr. 87's AOSP kernel from March 19th, which is version 7.0. I did test this with the stock kernel, which is an older version of Dr. 87's, as you will see in the install video, and then I did test it with of course this newer one, which I'm still on, and I did test it with Savoca's Furnace 1.8 kernel for AOSP. And speaking about kernels, the stock kernel that it came with, the older Dr. 87 kernel, I noticed that I was getting some random reboots and some crashing. When I say these reboots occurred, the phone would get really hot, and when I would go into Trickster, which I've since removed Trickster, and I'll show you why, it would seem that all 4 cores were maxed out, and then as 2 and 3 would bring themselves down, 0 and 1 would stay pegged to the max, and I couldn't figure out what it was doing. And closed all the recents, and I was just kind of looking at it. It would still get hot. I'm talking about 65 degrees Celsius or hotter, and I'd have to just reboot the phone, and that would fix the problem. Since I've installed the latest Dr. 87 kernel, that hasn't happened yet. And that's been a day and a half of usage, and it's been pretty rock solid. To note, some of the things I noticed that when it would get stuck would be with Bluetooth. I'm using A2DP streaming, and I would stop streaming, and I don't know if there's a process going on in the background that just wouldn't clear out. I did kind of observe there was some heat issues occurring while streaming Bluetooth music and pulling data over LTE. Maybe that's something to do with it, maybe it doesn't. On Furnace 1.8.0, I honestly did not keep that on here very long. By that I mean maybe an hour tops, because I noticed that the phone screen would turn right back on when I turned it off. Now, saying that, Savoca is aware of it. Somebody has finally sent him a log cat because he asked for one. Otherwise I would have done it. I did my research after I got rid of it and went back to Dr. 87's kernel. So he's working on it. To note, somebody mentioned something about Fox's fast charge. He was using an older version of it that was outdated. He did not realize that because he had updated some of his other kernels. He doesn't just work on this kernel. He has a couple other kernels he's working on for other phones. And he said he would update it in his next release. So we'll look forward to some pretty good performance from his kernels in the past, and I don't think there should be any change in the future. Now we're going to go back through here. As you can see, I am using the dark theme. I did not flash TDRS compatible gaps though, so it's not throughout. I've been kind of 50-50 on it if I like it or not, but that's my preference. It does work just fine. Until I install some TDRS gaps though, it doesn't quite match in some of the other applications. Not a big deal. I do like the way it looks here. We're going to go into customization up here. We'll see interface. In the interface app bar, I did have the best success with app bar. I did test it out. I tried to shift the engaging area up here towards the top, the trigger area up towards the top, to kind of keep myself from hitting it by accident. But what I noticed is that just wasn't executing itself very well. If you had the text for the icons on, it was bunched up in the corner like I don't know, Chinese characters or something. But it wasn't. It was just the text was all bundled together. So I'm not sure what happened there. Not a big deal, but I don't really use app bar anyway, so I wasn't really out anything. But I did test it for the ROM review. I disabled it. Clock widget, the same settings you come to expect. Power menu, we showed you that in the install video. Progress bar, again in the video. RAM's recents, again in the video for the install. Default app picker. And gesture anywhere, I did leave this enabled. I have had success with this. It works just fine. You don't want to see my text messages, so let me get out of here. Sorry about that. Should have thought about what I was pulling up before I did it. Anyways, gesture anywhere works just fine. Again, I took the place when I disabled app bar and tried out gesture anywhere. I moved it back up here to the top, so it's a little bit easier for me not to hit it by accident. I find that it's useful, but it's gimmicky. Probably not something I look for on a ROM, but it's there if you like it. And of course, you can set your density here, your LCD density. I got it set to 380. Now enable your slim recents. If you'll notice here, there's your slim recents. Disable it. It's gonna redo the launcher. There we go. And now it looks like this. Okay, so that's what that is. As you can see, Pi works. Okay, lock screen. Active display. Active display worked just like it has in any other ROM. I had no problems with active display. Let's look through here though. Let's go to the lock screen one first. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Interface. Got your custom wallpapers for your lock screen. As you can see, I have that enabled. You have slider targets, 8 targets. I don't ever use 8 targets, but it's there. I did use slider targets. I don't use shortcuts, but it's there. And slider torch is nice. It is also there. Notifications. This is what I like. I like to have my lock screen notifications here. It works well. Pocket mode. I did notice that pocket mode wasn't quite as responsive as it has been in some other ROMs, but it still works. I did find myself occasionally having to actually double tap the screen to look at it because it didn't come on when I pulled it in my pocket. Not quite sure what's going on there. Not a major inconvenience. It probably works 90% of the time or 95% of the time. Not a big deal. I just noticed it a couple times, and so I thought I'd mention it. You can hide low priority, and you can hide non-clearable, and you can also adjust the height just like you can in any other lock screen notifications that I have played around with in the past. Style, as you can see here, you can do the blur lock screen or see-through lock screen, and you can change the lock handle target, etc. Or lock handle icon. Let's see. Let's go back. Navigation. Your nav bar here, I disable it because I'm using Pi, but you do have the ability to change the height of your nav bar and the buttons that are on your nav bar. We'll go over to performance. Now this is a pretty loaded application here, and I like it. I did not dive too deeply into it. One thing I did notice is that Core 0 and 1 stay at 300 megahertz. I've never been able to get them to actually go offline. Not sure what to say about that. Maybe it's nothing. I didn't have any issues with it either. Some interesting things here. You got your CPU information. I can only say I understand a quarter of all this information that's posted here. Coming in from this side. CPU parameters. Here's where you can change your max CPU. Now, playing around here, I got it set to 2.8. Is it a huge difference? Not really. So I'm not sure. It does register as 2.8 because I did some benchmarking, and I'll show you that later. GPU parameters, I got that set to 450. UV table, I did not mess with any of that. Kernel, these are all the same settings I would normally play around with in Trickster. I didn't know if Trickster was messing with it, so I did get rid of Trickster just to be on the safe side. So you have a lot of options here. And you can see you can review the items that you've changed. And so I haven't changed very much in this, but I'm still kind of new into. Well, I say gesture anywhere. It wasn't really popping up accidentally, but then I did that. But anyways, build prop mods. I did adjust the proximity sensor delay. I'm still experimenting with that because if you have the phone to your ear, it's still doing the popping sound, you know, the locking and unlocking the screen. Still kind of trying to figure out what works best to prevent that from happening. Here's some more tweaks here. Okay. I didn't mess with that, but you can. This toast notification, every time I kind of play in here, sometimes it stays up a little bit longer than others, but whatever. And some more settings here. So I encourage you, if you know what you're doing, to play around with it, check it out. I have to keep doing this though. I don't know if it's just the way this app is built, but I have to keep doing this to get back out of it, to get back into settings, or I can close it and go into settings. There we go. Okay. So that's performance. Status bar. I am not going to click status bar color. That will crash. It has every time for me. So I'm not going to mess with that. The only way to fix that is to reboot the phone. Battery icon, obviously you can change your battery icon. You can change some of the colors here. You can hide the battery icon altogether. Double tap to sleep. Pretty easy to find. Show network speeds, notification count, single display. As I mentioned earlier, active display, I have it disabled now, but I did test it. It works just like you expect it to. Notification drawer. There's a lot of customizations in here, but they're the same customizations you're used to finding. In addition, you do have quick ribbon, which is this right here. Okay, and of course you can do custom image background, and you can play around with the transparencies. Pi controls work just fine. As you can see, I'm using them. I only have it triggered down here. You can do secondary row as well, and it does, I'll show you here, pull down the notification drawer, no issues whatsoever. Wake lock blocker, I didn't have any problems with wake locks, so I didn't enable it, or I didn't play around with anything there. Total blackout, as you can see, I have it turned on. We'll turn it off for you so you can see a difference. Kind of lightens everything up. There you go. I don't know how well it translates on video, but there it is. You got your theme chooser here. I don't use themes, but it's there. I'm going to assume that it works. Advanced options, super user. Here's where you can do super user control here, and you have your media scan behavior on boot. To note, I never really had to mess with this on the LG G2. I only ever had to worry about media scan behavior on my Note 2, so didn't have to mess with that at all. Okay. If one thing I did notice is that the OTAs, for some odd reason, the phone keeps telling me that there's an OTA, but when you open the OTA, it gives you a previous build version that it wants to update. So I just close it every time. I'm not sure exactly what's happening there. I will say that if you read through the form, the developer does recommend that you use twerp. And by developer I mean Original476. He's the one who's brought this ROM to us. He does recommend that you use twerp because that's what I guess they're writing the OTA to work with. So that the instructions that are sent are for twerp. I won't hang on that any longer. I think you understand, use twerp. There is no Omni switch or sound packs. Those are Omni ROM features that have found their way into some other ROMs I've tested here recently, but they're not present here. Double tap to wake works without issue, and you see I got set my Pi control, but also, as with most recent AOSP ROMs, it works on the lock screen too. Welcome edition. GPS works without problem. It tracks quickly, locks quickly, and it tracks accurately. Even the compass. So I did test that out twice in using this phone, and using this ROM on this phone. Let's get to the benchmarks section. All right, and battery life. So we're talking about those two things. You know, I grouped those together because those are screenshots. This is on the stock kernel. You got 8 hours and 32 minutes off the charger, 58%, and it's an hour and 54 minutes of screen on time. So you can extrapolate that you can get 4 hours roughly of screen on time at that same amount of usage. It's pretty steady for a while. On the stock kernel, I got 13,504. This is on Dalvik. This is one of those times where I had to reboot the phone because it just kept getting hot, and it's already at 60 degrees here. And you can see, in this case, Core 0, Core 1 are ramped up. Core 2 and 3 have already turned off, and it's still hot. This is 15 hours and 28 minutes off the charger, 25% battery life left. You can see the graph here, how much I used it. And you can see the phone does sleep. You can kind of line up the awake time and the screen on time. And I got 3 hours and 9 minutes of screen on time. So that goes about where I was getting before, and this is on the new kernel, that you'll get about 4 hours of screen on time. This is just letting it idle and trying to let it cool off. I took some pictures to show you. It brought itself down rather quickly, back down to 44 degrees from 51. This is a benchmark on the Dr. 87 kernel, the new one, version 7, and on ART. I got 15,392. So very good numbers, and this is me showing you that it is overclocked to 2.8 gigahertz, and those were the numbers I was getting with it. This is something else that I experienced that we'll talk about later as far as a crash goes. I had a crash when I came back up. It changed my launcher and everything. Anyways, continuing on, as I said before, I'm using ART. I had no problems with ART. The ART conversion does get hot. In fact, it gets so hot, believe it or not, I had to put my phone on an ice pack because I was afraid it was going to burn up. If you're going to use ART, change it immediately before you add any apps. Don't let it try and convert over 100 apps because it's insanely hot. I really thought I was going to fry my phone. A2DP, this is one section that I had hoped that, you know, as usual, QUO works no problem. You get your metadata and you streams without issue. My 4Touch, it streams without issue. It prompts you initially for text messaging support, but does not manage text messages to the head unit, like with other ROMs, or with some other ROMs. It also, likewise, doesn't send metadata to the head unit while using A2DP, but it does stream the music without any issue. So I was kind of hoping, you know, but it didn't work out. You can stream the music, it doesn't send the metadata to my 4Touch. There was no in-call echo during my tests. There was some mention on the forums about in-call echo. Note that's on the original kernel and on the other the newest Dr. 87 kernel that I tested. I had no in-call echo with either one. I did notice some launcher redraw though. It seems like when I'm exiting a game or using the phone for a while, that when I come back to the home screen, it has to redraw the launcher. Not a big deal. It happens quick enough, but it's noticeable. You see it. Just kind of like one of those polishes. You know, it's just not polished in that area. Camera. Let me pull up the pictures for you. Give me a second here. Okay, we'll start here. Turn to the side. Okay. Camera works fine. It's just like any other AOSP camera. It's a little slow on the shutter, but it does a pretty decent job. You can see here. Doesn't do too bad at all. Color application. I'll show you again. You can see the pink here, the red, the red. Again, you can see the pink and the red. You can see the pen there, the details. I mean, it does a pretty good job. And then outside, this is a really good shot. It came out really nicely. So actually overall I'm pretty impressed. The detail it brings back, it's really nice, really accurate. Does a pretty good job. Focus as well. Just a little slow. And that's the camera. Now, while I was doing my photo test, is the last time I got the crash that I was just showing the last pictures of there. I tried to capture a log cat, but the phone ended up having to reboot again. To note, when it rebooted, it took a while. It stayed on the splash screen for a while. Let me go ahead and reboot this while we finish up this review, just so we can time it. Let me actually power it off. Okay. I was taking photographs. When I came off from taking photographs, I went to the home screen and the phone just rebooted. Just locked up and rebooted. I'm not quite sure what happened with it, but when it came back on, it was fine. Okay. Except for the fact that it took a long time, and it changed my launcher from the Google Now launcher to Launcher 3. When I pressed home, there we go. It asked me which one wanted to use my default launcher, so I'm not 100% sure what happened when it rebooted. It did stay on ART, it didn't change the Dalvik, which is what I suspected would have happened, but it did not, so unusual. And then to note, after I changed it to the Google Now launcher, it loaded up the Google Now launcher and then rebooted one more time. But when it came up this time, it was actually on the Google Now launcher. So I have logcats and I've uploaded them to the forum. 1, 2, and 3. Here we go. So while that's going, we'll talk about the forum. The forum is rather young. And by young, I mean it's only 5 pages. 50 posts at making this video. And my post was the last one where I uploaded my logcats. Okay. This is actually a rather attractive boot screen, but I did talk about that in the install video. Original 476, he seems to be very active and very friendly. He's very responsive in his form. This is very nice to see. This ROM will probably continue to get better, I have no doubt. And we'll stop it there. So you got 35 seconds, and it's usable. So there we go. Free RAM real quick, once it's finished loading. I did forget to mention the free RAM. 1.3 gigs on a fresh reboot. We'll just hit it one more time just to make sure. 1.35 gigs. I find that in my usage it stays around 900. plus. I haven't really seen it get too far down. I think I've seen it once or twice get down to 600, 700 megs, but as soon as you clear it out, pops right back up close to 1 gig every time. So no issues with the RAM there. Again, if you're going to go and post any issues that you have, make sure you do a search. But in this case, you only have 5 pages of 50 posts to read. It won't kill you to read through the pages. Of course, as time goes on, that form's going to continue to grow because this is a pretty nice ROM. I mean, yeah, I had some issues. I had some crashes. But this ROM is still pretty young. Like I said, 5 pages. So as time continues on, the developer continues to work out the kinks and people continue to upload their logcats for any issues that they have, he can continue to make improvements. So I look forward to great things from this ROM. Very fast, very snappy. Performance is one of the best I've seen on an AOSP based ROM to date. Thank you. If you found this review useful, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any other questions about the ROM that I may not have answered in my review, I do keep a what I call a baseline backup, so that I can go back to it. And it's very minimal, but then I can do any other testing that you would like, and I try to get back to you as soon as I can.